Hi, my name is Doreen Ellen Beldotan from Tzfat in Israel, and today I'd like to speak about psychopathology in the Jewish family specifically. It's a very uncomfortable topic to talk about, and I've been struggling with myself over the last few days whether to make this video at all. But I think that it's and if so, in what venue. But I think that it's important that it be made in English for the general audience, because I think it's a topic that people feel affected by and don't understand well, and there needs to be an airing of the issue. One of the things that I love about the internet is the fact that people are giving their personal experiences, and I think that the body of research on a topic should include not only that which is empirically verified, saying that in quotes, by people working in laboratories who are being funded by research grants, who expect certain results, but also, more importantly, by people talking about their real experiences with it. And when we get all of those accounts together, we begin to see a rather comprehensive picture. So I would like you, if you're interested in the topic of psychopathology, to see the various documentaries that talk about the research that's done by professional researchers, and also listen very carefully to people who are giving accounts of what it's like to either be a psychopath or to live with psychopaths, or having come in contact, close contact with them. I think that this is the best way of really seeing a multidimensional picture on any topic. Listening to the research data, but also listening to the personal accounts. When I first came to YouTube, people were talking a lot about the Illuminati. And in the things that they were saying, I saw a lot of what I saw in my own family. It was exaggerated, it was distorted, and yet something rang true, something was right, and I began to try to grapple with that. And I made a video about my family, which I subsequently took down because I didn't feel that I had grasped the subject correctly. I think that having now begun to grapple with the issue of psychopathology, I'm getting a lot closer to understanding what's really going on in my family. In this video, I'm going to be speaking about psychopathology as a familial and sociological phenomenon. Also, I'm going to be speaking about what the phenomenon is on a very high spiritual, for lack of a better word, level, to be able to see it from the point of view of the Kabbalah, of Torah. And as my husband says, something doesn't become really real until you live it, and so we're going to be talking about it on the level of actually living a life that's been touched by psychopathology and is thus real. There are people in my family who hold very important positions that involve a lot of influence in the world. So one might think that they belong to the Illuminati, if you're of that kind of a mind, but it's really not the way it's described. I've never seen any kind of satanic worship in my family or weird cultic activity. I mean, none of that really goes on. I will describe how there is some kind of a dark spirituality that comes into this, but there's nothing like cultic activity, which I've said before. But I want to give you a few anecdotes from my family so for you to be able to see who and what they really are. And it's kind of a way of me presenting my bona fides when I come and I say to you that I do come from a family of psychopaths, and research has shown recently that there is a genetic component to this, that it does run in families. It runs through my family, particularly because back in Europe, my family were in the habit of marrying cousins, two cousins. And that continued until they got to America, actually. My mother's parents were first cousins. Many of my other cousins are also married to my other cousins. As a result of that, when my mother became ill and her blood was tested, the doctors questioned her about her family background because they had never seen such a pure strain of Sephardi blood in North America, which is kind of interesting because we always thought we were Ashkenazi. But the blood test said differently. And so this matter of Jewish bloodlines and psychopathy and negative effects on the world through influence really does have a basis, but I'd like to speak about it herein rationally and not with weird exaggerations of those from the outside who try to understand what they can't understand because they don't see it from the inside. So let me tell you a few stories from my family, and you begin to get an idea of what I'm talking about. My mother told me that her father was a gangster. Not a as if gangster, he was a real gangster. And as I say, my mother's parents were first cousins. My mother told me a story about when she was a teenager. She went to the home of one of my grandfather's business associates. And when she got there, she was very impressed. This was an Italian family, by the way. The Jews and the Italians collaborated in the mafia. She got to the house, she said, and she saw the guy on all fours, and his kids were riding on his back, and they were laughing. And he was a very warm person, and they had a wonderful day. And of course, they were, served a very elaborate dinner. And my mother was terribly, terribly impressed by these people. And she was thinking to herself, wow, what a wonderful family, so much love and so much warmth and so much fun. And when she left, she said to my grandmother, wow, what a great guy he is, And my mother tells me, said to her, yeah, he's awfully nice for someone who kills people for a living. My mother was also a very sick narcissist. People who come from psychopathic backgrounds absorb the vibrations, and they really are vibrations from the brain waves and from their activity, and that's what's familiar to them. So even if they're not themselves psychopaths, chances are they're going to marry a psychopath. Or something in that constellation of behavioral disturbances. It's one neurological glitch, but it takes many, many forms. It can become psychopathy, it can become narcissistic personality disorder, it can become what's called borderline personality disorder, which is sort of like the miscellaneous file of how they diagnose people when they don't know exactly what to do with them. In my mother's case, it was narcissism. And I want to tell you something very important about narcissism, which I was led astray about and didn't understand the phenomenon, and so I want to share it with you. Narcissists are not like Narcissus, who is so magnificently beautiful that he falls in love with himself. They're not necessarily physically beautiful. And a narcissist is someone who has a devouring need to get something from other people. And it can take various forms. So don't think that a narcissist is someone who's necessarily very beautiful. In fact, these are predators. All of this constellation of illnesses is predatorial. They're all predatorial. But some of them are better predators than others. And when a narcissist is a sloppy predator, when they can't get what they want from people, their frustration very often turns into some kind of self-gratification, which might make them physically ugly. My mother was a compulsive eater. Some of them become alcoholics, some of them become drug addicts. Again, this is all a devouring need. Feed me, feed me. So don't be led astray by thinking that all narcissists are beautiful. It's not necessarily the case. Sam Vaknin talks about gaslighting in one of his videos. I recommend that you see that. It's very important. That really does happen, and I'll give you an example of gaslighting. I was 20 years old when I finished a master's in philosophy, and I still didn't know what I want to be when I grow up. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So I went to work as a cocktail waitress because I hated the business world. I hated the capitalistic world even then. And I had to support myself somehow. And cocktail waitressing is actually a very good way to learn about human nature. So I went to work as a cocktail waitress, and I would come home with my tips in the evening, and I put them in an old pocketbook that I had, which was hanging in my closet. And at the end of the week, I would take my earnings and deposit it in the bank. Well, I began to notice that it seemed to me that the weekly total was less than the sum of the daily totals. And I didn't know whether something was wrong, if somebody was stealing, if somebody was coming in and taking the money. I don't know. And I mentioned it to my mother. I said, Mom, I don't understand what's going on. My weekly total doesn't seem to be my daily totals. And immediately she says to me, what do you think, I'm taking money from you? Which was something that really did not cross my mind. I said, no, I'm not accusing you. I'm just saying that there's something that isn't adding up here. When my mother died, I found a purse in her pocketbook which was stuffed with dollar bills, they were all just crumpled and stuffed in. My mother was taking money from me, not to the purpose of using the money, but to the purpose of undermining my belief in my own assessment of reality. And this is something that she did to me all through the years. If you've grown up in a home with a narcissist, with narcissists, with psychopaths, if it's something in your family, you're never going to be okay. And accept that about yourself. You're always going to feel that sick vibration that you felt as a child. And psychotherapy, and I don't know whether they were intentionally misleading or not, always made you think that if you remembered the one traumatic event that happened in your life, you would begin to heal, because we were all suppressing a traumatic event. And the key to your healing was recalling that memory. I spent decades trying to recall a memory, which never happened, until I realized that if you grew up with psychopaths and narcissists, it's not a question of having had one traumatic experience. You had a slow burn over a period of many, many years. It's a diffuse kind of thing. It's like I learned in chemistry when I was in high school, the amount of energy that's released from a steel wool pad rusting is approximately equal to that of a match being burned, the difference being the amount of time that it went over. Well, it's exactly the same thing. If you grew up with psychopaths and narcissists, you have been burned deeply, but do not expect that one match experience. With you, it's been a slow and diffuse burn. You'll be able to find happiness in yourself, but you'll always have to work much harder than people who grew up in families that were happy and healthy, where mom and dad were maybe like healthy sevens on the Enneagram, you know, and they loved life, and they were upbeat kind of people. You will be able to make moral, spiritual advancement and even find joy in yourself, but you're going to have to work harder. Just admit you've been emotionally crippled, and just the way someone who walks with braces can walk, but it's harder because they are crippled. If you grew up in a home with psychopaths, you're emotionally crippled. It's not pretty, it doesn't feel good, but this is your reality. And you're just going to have to work harder. But know that every small advance that you make in the direction of joy and being sympathetic and empathetic and loving life and loving other people and wanting their happiness is very precious in God's eyes. Excuse me. Specifically because you have to work so very hard to make those baby steps. I'll share another anecdote from my family with you. It's a story of one of my cousins. He's an only child, and he always called his mother, Mother Dear, and everybody thought that he was the most perfect and devoted son. Well, when my grandaunt, she's my grandmother's oldest sister, became ill, he knew that she had some money that he was going to inherit. And he came to her and he said to her, you know, if you leave the money to me in a will, it's over $1 million. I'm going to have to pay a lot of taxes on it. If you give me that money now, I won't have to pay taxes. Well, my grandaunt trusted him implicitly, and she gave him all of the money. What he immediately did was put her in a substandard welfare old age home. On the basis of the fact that she was indigent and she had no resources. And she died in that substandard welfare old age home, which was the subject of a number of inquiries, by the way. She died there 3 weeks later of neglect. So I'm not talking about psychopaths as if. I'm talking about the kinds of psychopaths who can premeditatedly kill their own parents. These are the kinds of people that I have in my family. He was subsequently involved in another, oh, by the way, and after my grandaunt died, he didn't bother notifying the government about her death and continued to collect her Social Security checks. That's how he finally got caught, and he is a convicted felon. The last I heard, he was walking around with one of those tracking devices around his ankle. While this is all going on, he then built another one of my great aunts. This is my grandmother's youngest sister, of her inheritance, which involved money that was coming to me, which I never got. Other people, other psychopaths in the family saw to it that I would never get that. And when he went to court, he asked for mercy on the court on the basis of the fact that my my great aunt, now my grandmother's younger sister, needed him to take care of her because she had no one else, which isn't true. She has a psychopathic daughter of her own who could have taken care of her, and the judge actually accepted that as a reason to lighten his sentence. Another anecdote in my family, I'm going to read you a quote which one of the psychopaths in my family wrote, and you'll get an idea of the kind of person you're dealing with. This is it's supposed to be a parody of scientific research which has shown that women prefer different male physical types at different stages in their menstrual cycles, that they prefer more effeminate men and less effeminate men at different days. So this is one of the psychopaths' takeoffs on that research. Scientific research shows that women's love for men's shapes vary according to the day of the month. There are days that we prefer tall men with beautiful teeth and hands of a pianist, and days of the cycle when we love men impaled with an iron poker up their ass and a plank full of nails in their eyes. This is a typical psychopathic technique. Pretend to be joking when you say things that you really think. And because they're so outrageous and because the normal mind would never come up with insanity like that, they're going to think that it must be a sick joke. Psychopaths love sick jokes. They're not joking. They really are sick. This person, because she's female and young, has been diagnosed as having borderline personality disorder. So now she's in group therapy for hours a day with a bunch of emos from whom she's learning how to emulate. And she's absolutely delighted with having been diagnosed as having borderline personality disorder, because that way, of course, she can blame her parents for the state that she's in. Psychopaths never ever take responsibility for the things that they do. So she's just, happy as a pig in shit, having been diagnosed as borderline personality disorder and being in group therapy with a bunch of emos to learn how to respond and look very emotional and kind of wounded. They all put up this kind of wounded thing. Every psychopath is in a reactive state of mind, not a proactive state of mind. They all think that they're victims of circumstance. All of them. They will all tell you, like my oldest great aunt used to say, we all start out wanting to do the right thing, but life just doesn't take us down that path. They all justify their cruelty with that. Totally reactive. They actually see themselves as victims. They really believe that they're poor, pathetic little people. I even saw an interview with David Rockefeller, in which he was trying to say that John Rockefeller was really a very kind and loving person. He just had to be a little bit rough because he was dealing in such a cruel, hard world. Of course, the issue of what he was doing in the world, the finances never treated. They all see themselves as just doing what they have to do in order to survive. About another one of the emos about another one of the psychopaths in my family, who is in a very influential position. This person actually has a position of distinction on the World Policy Institute. It's been said about this person that being interviewed by her is like Dan Rather said the following about this person. Being interviewed by her is like playing tennis with Steffi Graf. Do your best and you'll learn a lot. Anything less and she'll pave the court with you. Well, I can tell you from personal experience that she also knows how to use the courts to pave the pave the pavement with anybody that she feels that she has to overcome in any kind of way. And she is the absolute master of looking like gentle and vulnerable and so also frail. And she says things that look as though she's like ultra sensitive, but when you look at it, it's like there's a total lack of sensitivity. Most recently, she wrote on her Facebook page about there's this carousel that's called Dumbo Carousel or something in Brooklyn, and it was totally destroyed by Hurricane Sandy. And she wrote, "The most charming merry-go-round seems to be another victim of Sandy. Sad." You would think that this person is oh so sensitive that it's a fortiori if she cares about carousels that she also cares about people, right? Wrong. She actually doesn't give a fuck about the fact that people were harmed, and she's far more concerned about this lovely carousel having been destroyed, because I guess she liked to go on the carousel or something like that. This is the way they are. Do not fall for their oh woe is me, trying to elicit sympathy from you thing. They all do this, and it's extremely sick. I do have a cousin who's a Freemason. I wouldn't say, I don't know about the Freemasons. If they are what they say they are, I assume that there's a lot to that. Whether or not they're all psychopaths, whether or not, and chances are this is the case, that they started out as being a well-intentioned organization and were taken over by psychopaths, which happens a lot. These people overtake any kind of organization immediately and steer it in a psychopathic direction. I think that happened with the Freemasons. Yeah, it is a center of the business psychopathic world. I do have one cousin whose wife makes a big to-do about the fact that he's a psychopath, so that is part of it. I'm going to stop here. I realize that there's a lot to be said, and I'll need to be saying it in a few parts. So let's just stop here, and then we'll pick up and get into more of not so much this how psychopathy looks in the family, we've treated that herein, but how it has affected the Jewish world and the Jewish family, and thereby the rest of the world. And finally, I want to discuss what the true nature of psychopathy is, what the root of the phenomenon is. Thank you for listening, Bentayim, and in the meantime, excuse me, thank you for listening in the meantime, and we'll tune in again. Hi, I'm Doreen Ellen Bell-Dotan, and here in the second part of Psychopathy in the Jewish Family, I'm going to be speaking about the phenomenon of psychopathy, which exists in all human groups that we know about, but specific to the Jews. People have an overweening interest in this matter, and I've seen a lot of videos and heard a lot of comments and read a lot of things that show that there's a lot of imaginations on fire, so maybe we should just air the matter and talk about it honestly and openly. As a lead-in to speaking about specifically Jewish psychopathy, I'm going to be answering a question that you're probably entertaining, that being, okay, you say that you come from a family of psychopaths and narcissists, do you have these tendencies as well? And my answer is Wuden, which is Yiddish for what else? I mean, what else could I possibly be? But I have one of the less pernicious forms of it, and one of the more culturally and socially serving forms of it. And I want to speak about that whole phenomenon in this part. Before there was a Jewish state and a Jewish government and a Jewish army, there was the rabbinical establishment. And before there was the rabbinical establishment, there was the kahuna, the system of the kohanim. And those were the authoritative bodies at the time. And psychopaths always try to take over, and very often succeed in taking over, any kind of organized authority. So there is no doubt about the fact that the rabbinical establishment, which are the people who laid the foundation for